Good morning, everybody, and welcome in to the Week 8 edition of Establish the Run's First Look show. I'm Gary Hartman. Purpose of the show is to take a macro view, first quick look glance at the coming NFL slate. We go 20-ish minutes or so, go position by position, and just start getting ourselves in the mindset of what might make sense this week. Crazy that we're already in Week 8. Nearly halfway through the season. Next week will be the halfway point of the regular season, which every year goes by far, far too fast. But obviously happy to be back with you here. It's another interesting slate as we're right in the midst of bye weeks. We're right in the midst of teams being off the slate. And in general, we have another 11-game slate this week. So off this slate here this week, we have only two teams on byes. And that's the Chiefs and the Chargers. So big ones, obviously, for fantasy purposes. But we do have 4 primetime games, or 4 games that are off the main slate with a London game as well. So we have the Buccaneers and the Ravens, another 2 big fantasy teams. The Broncos and the Jaguars are playing Sunday morning in London. And not as consequential for fantasy, but still 2 more to take off the slate. Packers, Bills Sunday night, so no Josh Allen on the main slate. And then Bengals and Browns are Monday night. So there's no possibility of the Joe Burrow optimal quarterback three-peat as the Bengals are really starting to find their stride. So that does leave us with, a limited quarterback pool actually this week, as far as, especially from a ceiling perspective. And right up at the top that you have there, Jalen Hurts right on his own. Welcome back to the main slate, Jalen Hurts, after obviously being on a bye last week. Also someone that has a really, really high floor. They're at home against a Steelers team that they're much better than. They have the highest implied team total of the week at 27.5. They are also favored in this game by double digits by 10 points. So it's actually a spot I kind of like to attack. So the highest implied team total obviously has a rushing floor with his legs. And then the ability to put a pounding on a team, I think, would benefit Jalen Hurts. Even if they want to keep the ball on the ground, a lot of that would have to do with him. So I do think he has a ceiling all on his own this week. I think I'm guessing he'll be somewhat popular. But another thing with this week is it's a very tight slate. Once again, really tight pricing. DraftKings has made it difficult to play all the plays that you're necessarily going to want to play. I don't know if that's going to be true for cash or not this week, but it definitely is from a first look from a tournament perspective. So, I think you might be able to get them at somewhat of an ownership discount, falling through the cracks a little bit here. But then you look at the rest of the quarterbacks on the slate, and my guess is maybe not, because you're really struggling to find ceiling after that. You do have Kyler Murray underneath him, who really hasn't shown any ceiling games this year. I mean, 27 almost to 24 against Carolina. They're also, both of those are on the road, so take that for what you will, but they're playing a Vikings team that's also coming off a bye. That's 5-1. I think they're not as good as their 5-1 record shows, the Minnesota Vikings, but they do have plenty of good personnel. We know the Cardinals are tough. I mean, they're coming off a long week, but it's just so hard to want to invest in them. That said, he's really one of the only other few quarterbacks on the slate with a massive, massive ceiling. Even though we haven't seen it yet this year, we know it's in there for Kyler. And then the other interesting things, we have 8,300 Jalen Hurts, 7,500 Kyler Murray, and then a big-time drop-off to the next tier of quarterbacks. So Kyler will make my pool. I'm not going to be super excited about it, but he's in there. And, it just is what it is. The other thing about this slate is it's that game, the Cardinals-Vikings, is the second highest implied team total of the week, implied game total of the week at 48.5. There's really 3 games that are above 48, and then everything drops off to the 40 to 44 range. So it's a little bit ugly from game environment perspective. So kind of hitting on the right ones, I think, is going to be imperative this week. So the Cardinals-Vikings is a 48.5. The one that is higher than that, the only one that is higher than that is Dolphins-Lions at 50.5. So you see that here with Tua at 6,200 games in Detroit. We know we've been enjoying to pick on this Detroit defense all the time. Yeah, Dak and Dallas didn't get there against them last week, but we know how putrid that Lions defense is. Tua gets another week coming back from a concussion. He did throw the ball 35 times on Sunday night. So I don't think they were too afraid to let him rip. But I think that, the further we get away from all that concussion craziness, the more we'll get to the let Tua go and kind of put him in positions to have more upside. So I think Tua is definitely going to be in play here. I think he's going to be a little bit popular because the stacking options are so clean. The matchup is so good. It's the highest game total and team total of the week, but he's definitely got to be in play across the board. You've already seen a 40-point performance from him this year. The other games that he's played, we have not seen any type of ceiling, but I'm going to keep playing into the matchup, to the Mike McDaniel offense, to the price. It makes a ton of sense all across the board. You also have Kirk Cousins on the other side of that Arizona game. Arizona's defense has been bad. Kirk Cousins off the bye at home. He makes my pool for double stacks only, I think, this week. Other than that, I'm not really looking at Stafford at home against the 49ers. 49ers looking in a bounce back spot. I get that their defense looked bad last week, but I don't think the ceiling's there for Stafford right now. A couple 5K quarterbacks in play, though. I think this tier right here, Carr, Geno, Daniel Jones, all in play. So Carr, you guys know how I feel about Carr probably at this point. I am not a huge fan of Derek Carr's for GPPs, for tournaments. I do not think the ceiling is there, and you can look at his game log, and you can pretty much bear that out. Maybe a hand builder lineup or two, but in my optimizer, in my runs, he's not going to make my pool. He almost never does. But I think for cash games, he's interesting, only because they're in a dome in New Orleans, and it could, if you need that 5K tier, if you can't afford up for Tua, who I think will probably be the cash game quarterback that people will be interested in after Hurts. I think he's in there. And even for tournaments, if you think this is the week that he throws 303, I think it's okay to put him in. I question the ceiling, but on a week like this where there isn't that many ceiling plays, I think it's all right. He's under 6K in New Orleans in the dome. I think it could be a pretty interesting, sneaky week for the Raiders and some of their skill position guys. In general, that's the other one that has a 49-point total. So that's actually the second highest after the Dolphins line. So yeah, that one's a little bit sneaky. 49 points in Vegas Saints. I missed that one as far as the totals are concerned. So yeah, I think you got to consider attacking that game. Absolutely. Other 5K quarterbacks right there in the same game. You got Geno Smith and Daniel Jones. Geno Smith, has been still the surprise of the season. Goes in and the defense was a lot of their success against the Chargers this past week, but can't discount the fact that they put up 37 points in LA against the Chargers. Them and the Giants, two of the surprise teams of the year, facing off against each other. The Giants defense has not given up as many big games to quarterbacks, but this past week, their defense did not look nearly as good. They're dealing with a bunch of injuries, and they give up a lot of yardage through the air of the Jaguars, and it could have been a much bigger game for Jacksonville from a fantasy perspective if ETN didn't get stripped in the end zone, if a couple other things went their way. So if the Giants defense is starting to slip a little bit, this is in Seattle. We know they're going to have a real home field advantage. I think Geno's in play at 5,800. Although I think I'd probably prefer Daniel Jones on the other side of that game. I mentioned last week, hey, you know what you're getting out of Daniel Jones. It's 17 to 20 points. He's been good in this offense, but he hasn't shown that explosion. And then boom, in comes week 7 in Jacksonville, where 32 points, 100 yards on the ground. First Giant 100-yard rushers out of the quarterback positions is 1929. That's also the highest rushing yard performance out of a Giants quarterback ever at 107 yards. His passing stats are never going to be incredible, but if you can get over 200 yards and a touchdown or two, and he gets this done with his legs, that's what you want. He's in play at 5,700 against a Seattle defense that we've been attacking all year. A Seattle defense that's also bad against the run. Daniel Jones could be a big part of that. We'll talk about Saquon Barkley as well in a minute. One other quarterback that I think is on the radar this week, and that is Sam Ehlinger. So they announce it after pricing comes out for DraftKings. So you're going to get him at Stone Min. They're at home against Washington. They benched Matt Ryan. They didn't say this was injury related. They said that Ehlinger is going to be the quarterback for the remainder of the season. He's Stone Min. This is a guy that uses his legs, is my understanding. I'm not going to pretend that I know so much about Sam Ehlinger. I know he's a 6th-round quarterback that went to Texas from last year, or 2021 draft, I believe. They have to like what they're seeing in practice to turn to him. Obviously, things for Indy haven't been going that great, but again, they're at home against a Washington team that's really bad. They do have a good front seven, but if Indy's offensive line can hold up, and if he could just he's gonna get there on his legs. Like, this is the kind of play that I know Mike Leone kind of likes when there's a super outlier priced quarterback that's starting that also uses his legs. I mean, you're gonna have to consider him. So I think Ehlinger's in play across the board. Interesting quarterback week, really interesting. Like, you can go Sam Ehlinger at 4K. You can go Jalen Hurts at 8,300. And there's only a couple options in between that you feel any decent about. Definitely check out all our content for the breakdowns on this and further. Like, getting this right this week. I mean, it's pivotal every week, but I think getting this right this week is really important. I think Ehlinger's in play there. Running back, Christian McCaffrey. It's funny. We've been talking about all season. The matchups suck. We really want to play C-Mac, but he's had such tough matchups. And only his second matchup in San Francisco, it goes into LA to face the Rams, who have been an incredible run defense. I think he'll play a much bigger role this week than he did last week. I'm assuming he's had another week to learn the playbook, to get more involved and comfortable in the offense. I think he's totally fine in GPPs. He's not going to be used very much, I doubt, because you have Derrick Henry right under him, who we'll talk about in a second. But it's tough to get to in a Rams matchup. You need the volume through the air. And now in San Francisco, he's got a lot more target competition with Debo, who has similar routes, could kind of do some similar low 8-out stuff. You got Kittle, similar thing. You got Juszczyk, who they like to check down to as well. So, and obviously Ayuk's a good player. So the target competition is much, much more stout with his new 49ers teammates. Just something to consider. Derrick Henry, though, basically, I don't know if this is going to become the name of the game every week for first look, but what running back's playing the Texans? They might get the cover boy of the first look. And this week, the big dog gets that honor. We saw Josh Jacobs last week just hit major chalk in a major way against this Texans team. Almost a 40-burger. Henry, meanwhile, has looked like himself pretty much since week 3. This past week even didn't fall into the end zone, but they fed him 30 times, 130 yards, only 4 yards to carry. That's all right. Still got his 3 targets for 10 yards, throw another 4 points right on top of whatever he's got going, and that's 20 points. If he fell into the end zone, he would have been viable. So now gets the Texans. Come on, let's go. It's in play. It's going to be popular. I wonder if it's going to be like outlandishly popular because he's 8,400, but it probably will be because people have been playing this running back chalk like crazy. But it's hard to avoid. I love Saquon as well. We haven't seen a major ceiling game since that week 1 game in 36 points, but he's been very solid floor, right around 20 points every week. And this is a great matchup for him that we'd love to attack. Also similar thing this past week. If he had fallen into the end zone on 110 yards with 4 catches and 25 yards, would have had a very respectable game. So, touchdowns are fluky. We know this. I think Saquon's a fantastic play. You can stack him with Daniel Jones. I think the spend-up running backs are great. Again, it's going to be tough to play 2 of these guys. Pricing is really tight, but that's where like a Sam Ehlinger comes into play, right? You want to try to squeeze these guys. It's possible, but it's tough. So Saquon, you got Taylor in that same Ehlinger matchup against Washington. We're waiting for it on Jonathan Taylor. Only ran the ball 10 times this past week. Did catch 7 balls for 27 yards. I expect his volume, his workload, and his production to continue to increase as we get further away from that injury. I don't mind the spot against Washington at home. Not bad spot at all. Cook against Arizona. Haven't really seen much of a ceiling from Dalvin yet this year, but at home against the Cardinals, I think is in play for sure. I don't think many people are playing Dalvin Cook either. So if you want to play into that game that has the 3rd highest game total at 48.5 this week, I think he's an option from it. Josh Jacobs, they finally raised his price up. He was 6,500 last week. They finally what are we doing here at DraftKings headquarters? We're screwing up this Josh Jacobs price week in, week out. We got to bump him up 1,000. I still don't think it's enough to completely fade this Raiders team indoors. We mentioned they have a 25 implied team total. It's a 49-point game total indoors in New Orleans. I don't love it nearly as much as last week, obviously. And I don't know who's starting at quarterback for New Orleans yet. It's going to be interesting to see what that game environment looks like in general, but he's certainly in play. But I think I'd rather go Kamara underneath him, especially if Andy Dalton is starting again. And it looks like it's going to be 50-50. I think Jameis is pretty much ready to go, but they're basically haven't decided yet who it is that they want to start over there, have Dennis Allen and the Saints. So I think Kamara, a little disappointing last Thursday night. Still 9 targets each of the last 2 weeks. He's going to get the workload on the ground. We know Andy Dalton will throw the ball to him. Good matchup against the Raiders at home. Let's wait and see on the Dolphins situation. This is a game that we definitely want to attack. So these guys will be viable as bringbacks, whether it's Swift or Jamal Williams, especially because we don't know the status of their wide receivers. Chark's on IR, so he's not playing, but Amon-Ra St. Brown left that game with a concussion. So these guys might be the bringbacks that you want. But DeAndre Swift was a surprise early week rule out last week. I thought he was coming back. My guess is he makes it back this week, but he might be limited. It's a little bit of a tough position to get into. Miles Sanders against the Steelers. I think that's okay. We saw Mostert have some success on Sunday night against Pittsburgh in the same matchup. I like Miles Sanders this year. Kenneth Walker, or should I say Kenneth Chalker, hit in a major way towards the end of that game. And all the running back chalk hit this past week. All of Kenneth Walker, Austin Eckler, and Josh Jacobs were all in the perfect lineup. Just amazing stuff. Walker looks the part. He looks great. The Giants have had trouble stopping running backs on the ground, especially in chunk play situations. We saw ETN have some success. We've seen players have success. They're a bend but don't break defense is the New York Giants. You see them around 11th in whatever DraftKings metric is, but they have given up big chunk plays. Their linebacker core in the middle of the field is weaker than other parts of their defense. So I would not be surprised to see Kenneth Walker, who's still a little bit underpriced if you ask me, have a big game. Ramondre against the Jets. Jets defense is good. Not as good of a matchup as it would have been in previous years, but he's in play. Chicago against Dallas. That's more of a pass for me. And then you go down here, you're going to have Michael Carter filling in now for Breece Hall, which what a crappy injury. Sucked to see Breece Hall go down like that. Michael Carter, they did trade for James Robinson yesterday. I don't know how big of a role he'll have. They're at home against New England. New England's going to be looking for a bounce back. It was a really disappointing performance for them on Monday night last night against the Bears. It was crappy weather. We know their defense is probably a little bit better than they showed against the Bears running game last night, but the Bears were hit all over this team yesterday. I'd imagine Belichick's going to come back and try to game plan against that. But Carter, now that he's going to have this kind of 1A or whatever 1B job with James Robinson back, his target volume is insane. And I think his upside through the air is huge. So I like him as my sub 6K option, I think, this week. Pollard and Zeke will be in play in that same matchup on the other side. Zeke's become so touchdown dependent, it's really hard to get into him. The ceiling is just not really there right now. Inefficiency, touchdown dependency. I'd rather Tony Pollard, who is more efficient with a little bit more of a passing game role, but also hasn't shown it. I think they both make the pool, but it's small. It's small amounts. Again, we already talked about Jamal Williams. Let's see what's going on with the Cardinals backfield before we get into that. Eno certainly looked good last Thursday night, 23 points, 7.7 yards through the ground. Also as a threat in the passing game. If you're going to be attacking that game, I think you do like Eno Benjamin quite a bit. I'm not really getting into these other guys. I don't want Brian Robinson. I get it's a solid matchup against Indy, against a rookie quarterback, and he has volume. The ceiling isn't there for me. I mean, he's a plotter. I love the guy. I'm so happy that he made it back. I do not think he's going to be someone that we're interested in for DFS purposes very much. You need like a 100-yard, 3-touchdown game. He's not going to do much through the air, and he's inefficient on the ground. I just am not interested in it. I'd almost rather take shots on Antonio Gibson, who was much more involved this week, as credit to Ron Rivera said he was going to be. I still think he's the most talented running back. He did run the ball 10 yards, did have 3 carries. Like, if you want to take a shot on a Washington running back because you like the environment, I'd rather it be him, because teams have run all over Indy this year. I know that's tournament play only. And then anything else here? I mean, Algier is kind of taken over as their top guy. He ran the ball 16 times. He gets some carries in the inside the 5. Did find the end zone, but has not been efficient. Hard for me to want to get in there. Also, Damon Williams might be back this week. Cordell Patterson is close to coming back. I don't know if he's back this week, but anyway, that probably does it at running back. Keep an eye on any injury news. It's an interesting week there for sure. Tight once again. Let's go over to receiver, where we do have a couple of our stars back on this slate in Cooper Kupp and Justin Jefferson, our 102, 103, 104 ADP guys from preseason. Kupp gets the Kupp gets the Niners in a matchup where we did see the Chiefs have no issues throwing on them. Now, a lot of their success was little gadget plays to Mecole Hardman. They did break one down the field for MVS. Travis Kelce had his, wasn't incredible, but Kupp I find to be matchup proof, and I think at 9,600 on a really tight slate, he really may fall through the cracks here. So, you're going to get Cooper Kupp at single-digit ownership would be my guess. I don't know. I'm playing into that a little bit for sure. Jefferson's in the game environment we like against Arizona. I think he's an absolute smash coming off the bye at home. Cousins. Adams, same thing. We really like Adams this week. And we really liked Adams last week too. And, he was 5 yards away from the bonus, had his 9 targets, didn't find the end zone. The Raiders were in control of that game for a lot of it against Houston. But now they go into New Orleans with a 49-game total and in the dome. If you're playing into the Carr narrative, I would lock Derek Carr with Devontae Adams. And then I just like Devontae Adams on his own at a $1,000 discount to Cooper Kupp as well. Everyone's going to be playing a lot of Tyreek Hill because of this game environment against the Lions, because of using Tua. Even this past week, he had 13 targets, didn't do much on it, but the target share is insane. He's clear alpha in this offense. I think Hill and Waddle both very much in play. You could double them. I was proven wrong about that already this year. You could definitely double them. So that's something you could do. And then A.J. Brown gets the Steelers team at home. I think him and Devonta both should be in plenty of player pools with your Jalen Hurts stuff, in mini correlations, by solo plays. You're going to want to attack the Eagles this week. They have the highest team total. They're at home, coming off a bye against a Steelers team that is not good. Debo against the Rams, no one's going to really play him. He banged up his hamstring this past week. It's a little risky for me, but if he gets a clean bill of health, I think he's a tournament option. Hopkins came back and looked great. And I think he's got fresh legs. We got no Marquise Brown as of right now. 14 targets right off the bat. We know Kyler trusts him. This is a team. This is a game that I'm going to be attacking a little bit. So I think I'll have a lot of him. I'm less into Pittman with Ellinger. I think I want to see. I think the upside of Ellinger is his legs, and I get this matchup's good, and I think he makes my player pool. But it's hard for me to know that a rookie quarterback or whatever, a second-year quarterback that has no NFL experience, that is going to be run first, that they're going to try to simplify things for him, is going to be getting the ball into Michael Pittman's hands a lot, who's like a possession receiver, one-on-one coverage type of guy. It's hard for me to be into that very much. CeeDee Lamb against Chicago. Okay, I guess that's fine. The game's a little ugly, but Dallas obviously has a high upside there. If Amon-Ra clears protocol, he's in play. We already talked about Waddle, and definitely on the other side of that stuff. Both Seattle receivers will be in play. The Giants have been pretty good shutting down passing games, but again, I mentioned they've been bend not breaks. Like Christian Kirk still almost had 7 for 100 this past week. Like these guys can get there. Whoever is going to be matched up with Adoree Jackson more, I'm guessing it'll be Metcalf. I'm less interested in. He's been really good, but the Giants personnel for in the secondary still isn't that great outside of Xavier McKinney and Adoree Jackson. They have a lot of vulnerabilities there. This game could be interesting. If you're attacking it, feel free to attack it. Other than that, going down, Ayuk has been solid, gets the Rams. If you want to play into that game, I think he's all right. Olave, I really like in this game that we want to attack. Another 14 targets last Thursday night, short week at home. I don't care if it's Jameis or Dalton. I like him a lot. Cooks gets Tennessee. We've been waiting for it. I mean, we know the role is great, but he just hasn't done it. It's hard for me to get into it in tournaments. I've been disappointed by him a lot this year. And then, if you want to play some of these Pittsburgh guys on the other side of Philly stuff, Philly's defense is great, but, I guess you can do it just in correlation. DJ Moore. I'll definitely play DJ Moore. He gets the Falcons, a really good matchup for him. I said it last week. I definitely want to play him. We saw PJ Walker play with some confidence in a matchup against the Bucs. He's absolutely finally back over that 5K tier. So he doesn't make their cheap wide receiver volume this week, but he's going to be in play again. That Panthers offense in general will be a little interesting if you want to play Foreman as well. We didn't talk about him, over there. London on the other side of that game. I'm just waiting to see it again with Drake London. I mean, this team wants to be so run heavy. It's unbelievable. I think he'd still make my tournament play reluctantly. And then I mentioned the Lions receiver. So we talked about Amon-Ra. We got to wait and see. Josh Reynolds didn't get much done this week, but was truly questionable going into the week. There's Khalif Raymond as a spend down option as well. Everything else in this range, go check out cheap wide receiver volume on establishthorun.com if you're a subscriber, and we'll talk about those under 5K plays on Thursday. Tight end, Kittle, perfect tight end this past week, and could have had a much bigger week. Was 2 yards away from the bonus. Was so happy to see him. We saw this production ramping up, resulting in a really good spot here. Gets the Rams here. I don't think that's as good of a matchup, but I love George Kittle all the time. We don't have Kelsey. We don't have Andrews on this slate. Waller's still questionable. Probably won't even play him that much if he plays. Hammy, banged up. Adams target competition. Renfro starting to work his way back in fully. Tough to get into him. Ertz, though, against Minnesota, we know the target volume's definitely there for him. Did see it dip, though, with the return of DeAndre Hopkins. So I don't know if I'd play him in volume, especially because the ceiling has not been there either. The floor is okay. Ceiling hasn't been there. Goddard's fine in Hurts stuff. And then Hawkinson's definitely the guy I'm looking at this week. If there's ever a week for him to get close to this week 4 performance, and I don't think it's ever going to be close to that week 4 performance, it will be this week, though, against Miami at home in a game environment that we like, that has the highest total of the week here, 50.5. It's interesting. Higbee, starting to, in his last game, finally was the first game that he hadn't had like a huge role target-wise and yards-wise. Kind of a little bit of a better version of Zach Ertz, though, right now. The role's great. The floor is there. Not interested really in the ceiling. Pitts is now 4K. I don't know what to do with this. I really don't know what to do with this. Maybe he's not good. I know the Falcons aren't good. I mean, I know the Falcons are, outkicked their coverage a little bit for lack of a better term this year. And I know they want to keep the ball on the ground. I know Marcus Mariota, we don't have to consider to be a great quarterback, but Adam Levitan always says earning targets is a skill, and the guy has not been doing it for what his price tag is, for this pedigree is. The guy was the 4th overall pick in the draft. He's 4K. He'll make my pool, but it's ugly. Other tight ends here. Schultz against the Bears. I guess if you want to play into some of that stuff, Gesicki would make my Tua stuff only. Has seen his target volume ramp up here. A lot of that's game script dependent, but it's a good matchup. It's a great matchup for him. Irv also gets a really good matchup against the Cardinals, and I like Irv Smith here. I think especially in Vikings correlation, but he's only 3,500. The tight end pool is a little bit thinner this week, so I do like Irv Smith a little bit. And I think that just about does it here. Take a look at all of our content coming out throughout the day, throughout the week. We got Adam Levitan's solo pod today. We got team by team pods coming out as well later this afternoon. And obviously we'll have great content all throughout the week for all different things regarding this week 8 slate. Another fun one, in my opinion, another one that is to be interesting. The chalk has to bust at some point, right? I think the chalk has to bust at some point. But I'll be writing about that this week. Should we be starting to play chalk? Check out everything we have going on at establishthерun.com, including NBA DFS, NBA props package. We're grinding our asses off over there and the NBA street. It's been a fun start to the season. We had a huge props day last night. NBA DFS is off to a fun start. So no better NBA DFS content on the entire interwebs. I can guarantee it because I'm a part of that team and very proud to be so. So check out NBA DFS. Check out everything going on at Establish the Run. And best of luck in week 8.